My online friend sent me a picture of my house. Then I realized I'd never told him where I live. I used to think the internet made loneliness easier. Now, I honestly think it almost got me killed. This happened about 3 years ago when I was 19. Back then, I spent most of my time online gaming. Not professionally, just escape. I didn't really have friends in real life anymore after moving to a new city with my MOM. New school, new neighborhood, no connections. So every night after classes, I'd put on my headset and disappear online for hours. That's how I met Nexus. That was his username. Nobody knew his real name. At first, he just seemed funny. Smart too. The type of person who could talk about anything. Movies, conspiracies, music, life. We started gaming together almost every night. Then eventually, we'd stay in calls long after we stopped playing. Sometimes until AM. It got to the point where he honestly knew more about my daily life than people at school did. And looking back now, that's exactly what scares me. Because I told him everything. Not intentionally, just casually over time. Like how my MOM worked night shifts at the hospital. How I hated the apartment we moved into. How my room was beside the kitchen. Little details. Tiny meaningless details. Or at least I thought they were meaningless. The weird thing about Nexus was that he never talked much about himself. Every time I asked personal questions, he'd joke around or change the topic. At the time, I thought he was just private. Now I know better. One night during a game, he randomly asked, "You ever feel like somebody's watching you?" I laughed. "Bro, you sound insane." But he stayed quiet for a second too long. Then calmly said, "You'd be surprised how easy it is to watch someone." That sentence stuck with me. Even after the call ended. A few weeks later, strange things started happening. Nothing huge, just little things that felt off. I'd mention wanting a specific pair of shoes one night on voice chat. Then the next day, I'd get ads for them everywhere. That's normal now, obviously. Algorithms, tracking. But this felt different. Too fast, too accurate. Then one afternoon, I came home from school and noticed my bedroom window slightly open. I know I closed it before leaving, but I convinced myself it was nothing. Until the messages started. Nexus suddenly began mentioning details I never remember telling him. Like what color hoodie I wore that day, or what fast food place I stopped at after class. At first, I assumed maybe I mentioned it casually and forgot. But then he sent the picture. I'll never forget that moment. I was sitting at my desk eating noodles while we chatted. Then he said, "By the way, your neighborhood looks depressing." A photo appeared in our chat. I laughed at first because I thought it was random Google images. Then my stomach dropped. Because it was my apartment building. Not just the building. My window. My actual bedroom window. I froze completely. I remember staring at the screen trying to convince myself it wasn't real. Then Nexus typed, "Your blinds are open." I immediately turned toward the window, and my blood ran cold. Because the blinds were open, I slammed them shut instantly. My hands shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. I typed, "How did you get this picture?" No response for almost a full minute. Then, "Relax. I was nearby." Nearby? Nearby. I called him immediately. No answer. I kept messaging him. Nothing. Then finally he replied, "You shouldn't put so much personal info online." I didn't sleep at all that night. Every sound outside made me panic. Every car headlight passing the building made my chest tighten. I barely even looked near the windows. The next morning, I told my MOM everything. She thought it was probably just some online troll trying to scare me. But I could tell even she was unsettled, especially after seeing the picture. That afternoon, we contacted the police. And honestly, they barely cared. The officer basically said unless there was a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. They told me to block him, change passwords, be careful online. That was it. So I blocked Nexus on everything. Discord, Steam, Instagram, everything. For 2 days, nothing happened. And slowly, I started calming down. I convinced myself maybe it was just some creepy guy who found my location somehow. Still terrifying. But over. Then on the third night, I heard tapping, soft tapping, coming from outside my bedroom window. I stopped breathing. Tap, tap, tap. I slowly looked toward the curtains. There was a silhouette outside. Somebody standing there, watching. I screamed so loud my MOM came running instantly. But by the time she opened the curtains, the person was gone. Police came again. Searched around. Nothing. No footprints. No evidence. But they finally took it seriously after that. Especially when I showed them something I noticed afterward. A tiny scratch near the window latch. Like somebody had tried opening it. That night, my MOM made me sleep in her room. I felt pathetic. 19 years old and terrified to sleep alone. But deep down, I knew this wasn't random anymore. Somebody was watching me. The next few weeks became hell. I stopped gaming entirely, stopped posting online, deleted social media. But somehow, it kept happening. I'd noticed the same dark sedan parked near school repeatedly. Unknown numbers calling my phone and hanging up immediately. And once, I came home and found my bedroom chair moved directly facing the window. I know I didn't leave it like that. That was the moment I truly broke mentally, because it meant somebody had been inside. Police searched again. Still nothing. No forced entry. No fingerprints. Nothing. Then one detective asked a question that changed everything. Do you have any smart devices in your room? I said yes. Laptop, smart TV, phone, basic stuff. Then he checked my laptop camera and found malware. Someone had remote access to my webcam for months. Months. I felt sick instantly. That's how Nexus knew details about my life. He'd literally been watching me through my own computer. The detective explained how hackers sometimes target lonely teenagers and young adults online, build trust, gather information slowly, then escalate. Some do it for money, some for obsession, some for control, and some just enjoy fear. Police tracked the malware to several online accounts connected to Nexus. Turns out he'd used fake identities for years. Different usernames, different profiles, different victims. Most were young people living alone. And then investigators found something horrifying. Folders, hundreds of photos and recordings of people taken through hacked webcams. People sleeping, changing clothes, living normal life completely unaware they were being watched. Some victims were minors. Some had no idea even years later. I remember throwing up after hearing that, because suddenly all those nights gaming with him replayed in my head differently. Every conversation, every joke, every friendly interaction. None of it was real. I asked police if they knew who he actually was. And that's when things got even worse. They did. He was 34 years old. 34. Not some teenager gamer like he pretended. A grown man living only 40 minutes away from us. And apparently, he already had a criminal history involving stalking. The police raided his apartment 3 days later. What they found there still gives me chills. Walls covered in printed photos, victims, maps, schedules, notes about people's routines, including mine. He had photos of me leaving school, photos of my MOM going to work, photos taken outside our apartment at night. Then investigators discovered something even more terrifying. He had purchased lock-picking tools, duct tape, and restraints. After hearing that, my MOM started crying immediately, because we both realized the same thing at once. This wasn't just cyberstalking anymore. Something worse was coming. Police believed blocking him triggered escalation. He lost control over me online, so he moved into the real world. That thought still terrifies me. At trial, they revealed he became obsessed after realizing I trusted him emotionally. Apparently, he spent years targeting isolated people online because they were easier to manipulate, easier to monitor, easier to scare. And the scariest part, if he never sent that picture of my apartment, I probably never would have known. I would have kept talking to him every night, kept trusting him, completely unaware somebody was secretly watching my entire life through a screen. Even now, I still cover my webcam. I still get uncomfortable when apps request camera access. And honestly, I don't trust online friendships the same way anymore. Not because everyone online is dangerous, but because some people are incredibly good at pretending to be harmless. That's the real danger. Not the creepy messages, not the fake profiles. It's the feeling that you know someone, when in reality, you've been talking to a stranger studying your life from the shadows the entire time. But the story didn't end with his arrest. Honestly, that's when things somehow became worse. Because after the trial started, detectives contacted me again. They said they needed me to come identify some evidence recovered from Nexus's apartment. At first, I thought it would just be screenshots or chat logs. I was wrong. Completely wrong. The detective brought out 3 storage boxes. Inside were hard drives, USB sticks, folders, thousands of files. Most of it was evidence connected to dozens of victims across different states. But then they showed me a folder with my name on it. Not my username, my real name, Ethan Miller. Seeing that made my stomach twist instantly. The detective opened the folder carefully. Inside were hundreds of photos, not screenshots, actual photos, printed, organized by date. Pictures of me walking home from school, at the grocery store, leaving my apartment, sitting inside my room through the window. Some were taken months before he even introduced himself online. That realization nearly broke my brain, because it meant something horrifying. Nexus didn't randomly meet me online. He targeted me intentionally. The detective confirmed it. Apparently, investigators believed he first saw me in real life at a gaming CAF near campus. After that, He found my online accounts and created a fake friendship to get close to me digitally. I felt physically sick hearing that. Every memory suddenly felt poisoned. The late night talks, the jokes, the trust, none of it happened naturally. It was planned, calculated, like I was some project. Then the detective showed me something I still wish I never saw. A notebook. Inside were handwritten entries about me. Pages and pages. Things like, subject appears lonely, trust level increasing, mother absent during night hours, bedroom window vulnerable. I stopped reading after that. My hands were shaking too hard. The detective apologized, but he said they needed me to understand how serious the situation had become. Then he asked me something strange. Did you ever notice anyone else around him online? At first, I said no. Then I remembered someone. A user named Vale. Vale used to occasionally join our game lobbies. Never talked much. Mostly listened. I barely remembered them. But the second I mentioned the name, the detective's expression changed. Apparently, that username appeared multiple times in the investigation. Not just in chats. In payments. Encrypted forums. Private groups. Suddenly, the detective started asking detailed questions. How often did Vale appear? Male or female voice? Anything personal shared? I couldn't answer much. Because honestly, I never paid attention. And that terrified me even more. Because now I realize there might have been other people watching too. That thought destroyed my ability to feel safe online permanently. A week later, police informed us that more victims were being identified. One of them was a 17-year-old girl from another state. She'd been speaking to someone online for over a year before, disappearing temporarily from home. Thankfully, she was later found alive. But investigators discovered Nexus had communicated with her too. That hit me hard, because for the first time I understood something terrifying. I wasn't special. I was just another target, another folder, another obsession. Then came the media attention. Again, news outlets somehow got access to details from the case. Suddenly headlines everywhere were calling him the webcam watcher. People online became obsessed with the story. Podcasts covered it. TikTok creators dramatized it. Conspiracy pages spread fake information. Some even leaked my social media photos. I had strangers messaging me daily. Some supportive, others disgusting. A few people actually blamed me, saying I was stupid for trusting someone online. Like loneliness is a crime. I ended up deleting every account I had. Every single one. Then one night around AM, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. At first, I ignored it. Then another text came through. A picture. My chest tightened instantly. It was my apartment building. Again, I nearly dropped the phone. Then another message appeared. Did you really think you worked alone? I stopped breathing. My entire body went numb. I called police immediately. Within minutes, officers arrived. They searched the area for hours. Nothing. But this time was different. Because whoever sent that message knew details about the case that weren't public. Which meant one thing. Someone connected to Nexus was still out there. For the next month, police placed patrols near our apartment almost every night. My MOM became paranoid. Honestly, so did I. Every stranger felt dangerous. Every parked car felt suspicious. I stopped going places alone. Then one afternoon, detectives contacted me urgently. They traced the number. The message came from a prepaid phone discarded less than a mile from my apartment. But nearby security footage caught something important. A woman, wearing a hoodie and mask. The detective showed me still images, and I immediately recognized the hoodie. Black with purple symbols on the sleeves. I'd seen it before. On Vale. During one of our old gaming video calls. Suddenly everything became real again. Because Nexus wasn't the only one. Police believed Vale was another member of the same hidden online group. And according to recovered messages, she was obsessed with several victims too, including me. That knowledge genuinely destroyed my mental health for a while. Imagine discovering strangers secretly discussed your life for entertainment, tracked your routines, shared pictures of you, talked about approaching you. I started sleeping with lights on. No joke. Even hearing footsteps outside my apartment made my heart race. Then one night, something happened that I still can't explain fully. I woke up around him thirsty. As I walked toward the kitchen, I noticed something near the front door. An envelope, half slid underneath it. I froze instantly, because I know it wasn't there earlier. I slowly picked it up. No address, no name. Inside was a printed photograph. Me, sleeping, taken inside my bedroom. Recent, very recent. I nearly collapsed. Because by then, police had already confiscated all devices connected to Nexus, meaning somebody else took it. On the back of the photo were 5 words handwritten in black ink. You look peaceful when unaware. I can still remember how cold my body felt reading that. Police arrived within minutes again. Crime scene teams dusted everything. And this time, they found fingerprints. Not mine, not my mom's, someone else's. The fingerprints later matched a woman named Serena Vale. Real name, Vanessa Crowe. 30 years old. Former cybersecurity student. No major criminal record. But deeply connected to Nexus Online. Police discovered years of conversations between them. And those conversations were horrifying. The two of them treated victims like characters in a game. Ranking them. Discussing fear reactions. Sharing webcam recordings. Even planning physical surveillance together. I honestly lost faith in humanity reading some of it. The craziest part. Vanessa had apparently never even spoken directly to me online more than twice. Yet she somehow became obsessed anyway. Investigators believe Nexus talked about me constantly to her. That obsession transferred. Like I became some fictional character in their twisted world. Police finally arrested her too. States away after tracking. Purchases linked to the prepaid phone. Inside her car they found cameras, fake IDs, and printed photos of multiple victims, including me. Again, the detective later admitted something terrifying. She was probably preparing to contact you directly. I asked what that meant. He stayed silent for a moment too long. That silence told me enough. After Vanessa's arrest, things slowly calmed down. But honestly, life never fully returned to normal. How could it? For almost 2 years, I constantly looked over my shoulder. Therapy helped eventually. So did moving far away. New city, new apartment, new routines. I even made real friends again slowly. But there are still habits I can't break. I cover every webcam. I never share locations online. I don't post personal details. And anytime somebody online asks too many questions, I leave immediately. Because some people don't just browse the internet, they hunt on it. The weirdest part of all this. Sometimes I still think about those early gaming nights before everything went bad. And part of me misses them. Not because I miss Nexus, but because I miss who I was before all this happened, before fear replaced normal life, before I learned how dangerous loneliness can be online. People think predators always look obvious, but the scariest ones don't threaten you immediately. They listen first, they learn you, they become your comfort, and by the time you realize something is wrong, they already know where you live. The investigation into Vanessa should have made me feel safe again. Instead, it made me paranoid in ways I can't even explain. Because police kept discovering new things, new victims, new accounts, new hidden forums connected to Nexus and Vanessa. And every discovery raised the same terrifying question. How many people were involved in this? I tried moving on anyway, tried pretending life was normal again. But normal was gone. I transferred colleges, moved with my MOM to another apartment across the city. New locks, new routines. For the first few months, things were quiet. Too quiet. And honestly, that scared me too. Because after living in constant fear for so long, silence starts feeling suspicious. Then one afternoon, I got an email from an unknown address. No subject line, no message, just one attachment, a video file. My stomach dropped instantly. I almost deleted it without opening it. But curiosity won. Big mistake. The video started with static, then slowly focused. It was me, sitting inside a CAF near campus, recorded from far away. Recent, very recent. The camera zoomed in slowly on my face. Then the video ended. No text, no explanation, nothing. I felt sick immediately. Because there was only one explanation. Somebody was still watching me. I contacted the detective handling my case again. At this point, he almost sounded exhausted himself. They traced the email through multiple servers but eventually found something useful. The account had logged in briefly from a public library computer, less than 15 minutes from my apartment. Security footage showed someone wearing a hoodie and mask, too blurry to identify. But the detective noticed something else. The person walked with a limp, and suddenly he remembered something from Vanessa's arrest report. She had an old ankle injury. That possibility terrified everyone. Because Vanessa was supposed to still be in custody awaiting trial, police immediately checked. And that's when chaos exploded again. Vanessa Crowe had disappeared during prison transport 2 days earlier. The transport vehicle crashed during heavy rain outside county lines. One officer died. Another was hospitalized. Vanessa escaped. Nobody knew where she went. The second I heard that, I knew the video was from her. It had to be. Police placed temporary surveillance around our apartment again. But honestly, I already knew it wouldn't matter. Because people like Vanessa didn't think normally. Fear excited her. Control excited her. And somehow, she blamed me for Nexus getting caught. The detective later admitted they found messages where she called me the reason everything collapsed. That thought haunted me constantly. Then one night around midnight, I got another notification. This time, it was a direct message request on an old Instagram account I forgot existed. The message said, "Do you still leave your kitchen light on before bed?" I nearly stopped breathing. Because I did. Every night, I ran straight to the kitchen window. Nothing outside. No cars. No people. But suddenly, I noticed something strange across the street. A parked van. Dark grey. Engine running. I called police instantly. But before they arrived, the van drove away. The next morning, detectives reviewed nearby traffic cameras, and they found it. The same van had been circling my neighborhood for almost 2 weeks. Different times, different streets, always nearby. Then came the part that truly terrified me. The van was registered under a fake name connected to another account from the investigation. Not Nexus, not Vanessa, someone else, another member. At this point, I honestly started losing my mind. Because every time police uncovered one person, another appeared. It felt endless. Like I'd accidentally uncovered some hidden network of predators who all shared information. And according to investigators, that's basically what it was. Private groups built around stalking, surveillance, hacking, and obsession. Most members never acted physically, but some did. And those were the dangerous ones. Then came the worst night of my life. I woke up around M to complete silence. No AC humming, no traffic outside, nothing. That's what woke me up, the silence. Then I noticed my bedroom door was open. I always slept with it closed after everything that happened. Always. My chest tightened instantly. I slowly sat up and saw a shadow at the end of the hallway, standing perfectly still, watching. I froze completely. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there. Then my phone buzzed beside me. I nearly screamed. Unknown number. One message. Don't turn on the lights. Pure terror shot through my body. I grabbed the lamp beside my bed anyway and switched it on immediately. The hallway was empty. Nobody there. But the apartment front door was wide open. Police arrived within minutes. And this time, they finally found evidence. Fresh, muddy footprints inside the apartment. And fingerprints on the front doorknob. Vanessa's fingerprints. She had been inside. Actually inside. While I slept. The detective later admitted something horrifying. She probably stood there watching you for several minutes. That sentence genuinely changed me forever. Because after that, sleep stopped feeling safe entirely. Police launched a massive manhunt after the break-in. News stations started covering the escape heavily. People online became obsessed again. Somebody even leaked Vanessa's old forum posts. And reading them was like reading the diary of a psychopath. She described victims like fictional characters. Talked about emotional ownership. About the thrill of entering people's homes unseen. About how fear made people feel closer. I wish I never read any of it. Then finally, nearly 3 weeks later, police found her, but not where anyone expected. She was discovered hiding inside an abandoned motel almost 4 hours away, alone, surrounded by printed photos, maps, laptops, and dozens of folders about different people, including me. Again, the scariest part, investigators discovered she'd been planning to flee the country using fake documents. But before leaving, she wanted to see me one last time. That line came directly from her journal. I still get chills thinking about it. After her final arrest, things slowly faded from public attention. The trials ended. The news moved on. People forgot. But I didn't. You don't just forget something like that. Even years later, I still check windows before sleeping. Still avoid posting locations online. Still feel uneasy when strangers know too much about me. And honestly, the internet feels different now. Less innocent. Because most people think danger online only exists on screens. But sometimes, the person messaging you every night isn't just behind a keyboard. Sometimes they're closer than you think. Watching quietly. Learning your routines. Waiting for the moment you stop being careful. A year passed after Vanessa's final arrest. And for the first time in a long time, life actually started feeling normal again. Not perfect, but manageable. I started sleeping better. Started going outside more. Even started dating again. Her name was Alyssa. And before you say it, yeah, after everything that happened, trusting somebody new was difficult. Very difficult. But Alyssa was patient. She never pushed, never asked weird questions, never acted suspicious. Honestly, she was probably the first person who made me feel safe again. That's why what happened next destroyed me so badly. One Friday night, Alyssa stayed over at my apartment for the first time. Nothing special, just pizza, movies, normal couple stuff. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without anxiety. No checking windows, no covering every light, nothing. Then around 2:30 a.m., I woke up suddenly. No idea why, but something felt wrong immediately. The TV in the living room was on, static flickering softly through the apartment. Alyssa was still asleep beside me. Then I noticed something else. My laptop was open on the desk. I know I closed it before bed. My chest tightened instantly. I slowly got up and walked toward it. The screen was black, but the webcam light was glowing. Someone was remotely accessing it. Again, I actually felt my knees weaken, because there was no way this was happening again. I slammed the laptop shut immediately. That's when the TV static stopped, and words suddenly appeared on the screen. White text against black. Welcome back. My blood turned to ice. Alyssa woke up instantly from my reaction. I could barely even speak. Then another line appeared. You got comfortable too fast. Alyssa grabbed my arm. What's happening? I honestly couldn't answer, because my brain had already gone somewhere darker. What if Vanessa wasn't alone after all? What if someone else from the network was still active? Then the TV screen changed again, this time showing a live camera feed. My apartment building entrance, current timestamp, live footage. Someone was outside, watching. Alyssa immediately called 911 while I stared at the screen frozen. Then the camera angle shifted slightly upward, and I saw them. A person standing across the street wearing a dark hoodie, looking directly toward my apartment window. Then they waved, slowly, deliberately. I don't think I've ever felt fear like that before, because suddenly it wasn't paranoia anymore. It was happening again. Police arrived within minutes, but by then the person was gone. Again, the responding officers searched the area and found something near the sidewalk outside my building. A small wireless camera hidden inside a bush, pointed directly at my apartment entrance. The detective handling my old case got involved immediately after hearing about it. And honestly, I could tell from his face that he was worried too, because whoever did this knew details that were never public, specific phrases, specific methods. It was connected somehow. Then investigators discovered something terrifying. The signal from the hidden camera had been routed through my own internet network, meaning someone had physically accessed the building recently, possibly multiple times. That thought destroyed any sense of safety I had left. Over the next week, police searched every inch of my apartment, and eventually, they found it, hidden underneath my kitchen table, a tiny audio recorder. My stomach dropped instantly, because that meant somebody had been inside recently enough to plant it. Again, Alyssa became terrified after that. Honestly, I don't blame her. She stopped staying over, started triple-checking locks herself. Then one night, she asked me a question that broke my heart. What if they're doing this because of me now? I didn't know how to answer, because honestly, I wondered the same thing. Then came the biggest twist of all. The detective called me into the station urgently one afternoon. Apparently, cybercrime analysts finally decrypted several damaged files, recovered from Nexus's original hard drives. One file contained a list of usernames, addresses, schedules, victims, but certain names were highlighted differently, marked with stars, people they considered priority obsessions. My name was one of them, but beside my name was another entry, transferred. I stared at the screen confused. What does that mean? The detective looked uncomfortable, then quietly admitted. Investigators believed members of the group sometimes became obsessed with each other's victims, like trading targets, trading ownership. I genuinely felt sick hearing that. Then he showed me another username connected to my file. Watching a user investigators had never identified. No real name, no face, nothing. But according to recovered chats, Watching became interested in me shortly before Nexus got arrested. And unlike Nexus or Vanessa, this person was careful, very careful. No emotional outbursts, no mistakes, no traceable patterns. That terrified investigators more than anyone else. Then the detective said something that made my blood run cold. We think this person may still be active. That night, I barely slept again. Every tiny sound felt amplified. Every passing car made my chest tighten. Then around him, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. Just 6 words. Vanessa was too emotionally attached. I stopped breathing. Another message appeared immediately after. That made her sloppy. I stared at the screen in horror, because the tone felt different. Calm, cold, professional almost. Not emotional like Vanessa. Not playful like Nexus. This felt worse. Then the final message came through. But I've been watching quietly. At that exact moment, the lights in my apartment shut off. Complete darkness. Alyssa screamed from the bedroom, and somewhere inside the apartment, I heard footsteps. Every instinct in my body screamed run. But the problem was, the footsteps sounded like they were between us and the front door. Alyssa grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. The apartment was completely dark except for faint city light coming through the curtains. Then came another sound. A slow creak from the kitchen, like someone shifting their weight carefully, not rushing, not panicking, calm. That was the terrifying part. Whoever was inside wasn't scared. They were comfortable. My phone buzzed again. I looked down slowly. Unknown number. Don't make noise. I felt physically sick. Alyssa whispered, "What do we do?" I tried calling 911 quietly, but before the call even connected, another text came through. "I can hear you breathing." That sentence nearly broke me mentally, because it meant they were close, very close. Then suddenly, a loud crash exploded from the kitchen. Alyssa screamed. I grabbed the nearest thing beside me, a metal lamp, and pulled her toward the bedroom. We locked the door instantly. Another bang came from outside. Slow footsteps approached the hallway. Then silence. Complete silence. Honestly, the silence was worse than the noise, because my imagination started doing horrible things. I kept picturing someone standing outside the bedroom door smiling, listening, waiting. Then came 3 soft knocks. Knock, knock, knock. A calm voice spoke from outside the door. "Ethan." My blood froze completely. It was a man's voice. Soft, controlled. "You've made this very difficult." Alyssa was crying quietly beside me. I held the lamp so tightly my hands hurt. The voice continued, "If you stay quiet, nobody gets hurt." That sentence snapped something inside me, because suddenly I realized something horrifying. This person didn't come just to scare me. They came prepared. Then the doorknob started turning slowly. Once, twice. The lock held. Then the man sighed softly from outside, almost disappointed. And suddenly, the bedroom window shattered inward. Glass exploded everywhere. I actually thought someone fired a gun at first. But it was a brick, wrapped with something. A phone. The screen was already on. One live message displayed. Wrong distraction. Before I could even process that, the bedroom door burst open. A figure in black rushed inside. Everything happened too fast after that. I swung the lamp blindly. It connected with something hard. The man stumbled backward. Alyssa screamed again. And for the first time, I saw him clearly. Black hoodie, gloves, face partially covered, but his eyes, calm, almost emotionless, like he wasn't even angry. Then he pulled something from his jacket. Not a gun, a taser. The sound crackled through the room loudly. I grabbed Alyssa and shoved her toward the hallway. Run! We sprinted barefoot through the apartment while the man chased behind us. I could hear him breathing calmly the entire time. Not yelling, not threatening, just following. That somehow made it worse. We reached the front stairwell, outside the apartment, and started running downstairs. Then suddenly, Alyssa fell hard. The man had grabbed her ankle. I turned instantly and hit him again with the broken lamp base. This time hard enough to crack his mask partially off, and I saw part of his face. Young, way younger than I expected. Maybe late 20s. Clean cut, normal looking. That terrified me more than anything, because he looked like somebody you'd pass at a grocery store and never notice. The man recovered fast and lunged again. Then police sirens exploded outside. Everything froze for half a second. The attacker looked toward the window, then toward me, and for the first time, he smiled. Not a crazy smile, a small one. Like this was all interesting to him. Then he ran back upstairs. Police stormed the building less than a minute later, but by the time they searched the apartment, he was gone. Again. The back fire escape had been cut open beforehand. Planned. Everything planned. The police found dozens of disturbing things inside afterward. Hidden cameras, signal jammers, copies of my apartment keys, and most terrifying of all, photos of Alyssa, taken without her knowledge, at work, at the gym, even outside her parents' house, that completely destroyed her, because now she was part of it too. The detectives later confirmed something horrifying. What Janine had likely been stalking both of us for weeks before entering the apartment, maybe months. Then came the biggest revelation of the entire case. Investigators finally identified him through DNA left on the shattered mask. His real name was Daniel Mercer, and when detectives showed me his file, I felt my stomach drop instantly, because I recognized him. Not from online, from real life. Daniel worked at a coffee shop near my college years earlier. I used to see him almost every morning. Quiet guy, always reading books, always wearing headphones. We probably exchanged small talk dozens of times. That realization broke my brain, because it meant something terrifying. He knew what I looked like before Nexus ever contacted me. Police later uncovered the full truth. Daniel had actually introduced Nexus to me online. He picked me. He watched from the background while Nexus built trust with me. The entire thing was coordinated from the beginning. And according to recovered messages, Daniel became obsessed after watching how emotionally attached I became to Nexus's fake friendship. To him, it was fascinating, like watching an experiment. The detective told me Daniel rarely interacted directly with victims. He preferred observation, watching from distance, studying reactions. That's why he lasted longer without being caught. He was patient, careful, and incredibly intelligent. The manhunt for Daniel lasted almost for months. 4 months of fear, 4 months of police protection, 4 months of barely sleeping. Then finally, they found him, or what was left of him. A hiker discovered Daniel dead inside a remote cabin several states away. Official cause was suicide. But honestly, some investigators weren't convinced, because the cabin contained almost no personal belongings. No fingerprints except his, no computers, no phones, nothing. It looked staged. And the weirdest part, a message had been carved into the wooden wall beside where he died. 8 words. Observation only ends when the subject stops breathing. After that, the case officially closed. No more messages, no more cameras, no more stalking. Years have passed now. Alyssa and I eventually broke up, not because we didn't love each other, but because trauma changes people, sometimes too much. I still think about Daniel sometimes, about how many ordinary faces you pass every day without realizing what's behind them. That's the scariest thing I learned from all this. Danger rarely looks dangerous. Sometimes it looks polite, quiet, forgettable, and sometimes the person secretly watching your entire life already stood beside you years ago while you smiled at them without thinking twice. For a long time, I tried convincing myself it was finally over. Daniel was dead. Vanessa was locked away. Nexus was gone. The nightmare had to end eventually, right? That's what my therapist kept telling me. That chapter is over. But deep down, something never felt finished. Maybe it was paranoia, maybe trauma, or maybe some instincts exist for a reason. About 8 months after Daniel's death, I moved again. New city, new apartment, new job. I stopped using my real name online almost entirely. No social media, no gaming accounts, nothing personal. I wanted invisibility, and for a while, it worked. Life became quiet again, the kind of quiet I used to dream about. Then one rainy Thursday night, I came home from work and noticed something strange. My apartment smelled like cigarette smoke. I didn't smoke. Nobody I knew smoked. At first, I thought maybe the smell drifted from another apartment. But then I noticed something worse. My bedroom closet door was slightly open. I know I left it closed. Every nerve in my body immediately lit up. I grabbed a kitchen knife without even thinking. Slowly walked toward the bedroom. The closet sat there half open in silence. Dark inside. I remember my heartbeat sounding louder than the rain outside. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. The message said, "Still checking closets first." I stumbled backward instantly. Pure panic. I rushed forward and ripped the closet door open. Nothing inside. Empty. But hanging from one of the hangers was a black hoodie. My blood went cold immediately, because stitched onto the sleeve in dark purple thread were the words, "Watcher 9. I called police shaking so badly I could barely talk. Officers searched the apartment thoroughly. No forced entry. No fingerprints. No cameras. Nothing. But they all agreed on one thing. Someone had definitely been inside, and they wanted me to know it. The detective from my old case flew in 2 days later after hearing about the hoodie. Honestly, he looked exhausted the second he saw me. That silence answered everything. Then he told me something he probably wasn't supposed to. 3 weeks before my apartment break-in, another person connected to the old investigation disappeared. A former forum member who had agreed to cooperate with police. Gone completely. Nobody. No trace. Then another witness reported being followed by someone wearing a black hoodie. At that point, the detective admitted the possibility nobody wanted to say out loud. There might have been another leader behind everything. Someone even Daniel answered to. That thought honestly made me feel physically weak. Because if that was true, then this whole thing was bigger than anyone realized. Then came the package. No return address. Left outside my apartment door around AM according to security footage. Inside was an old camcorder tape. Actual VHS. No note. No explanation. The detective had it digitized safely before anyone watched it. And when we finally did, I genuinely wished we hadn't. The footage was old. Grainy. Early 2000s maybe. At first, it just showed a dark room. Then a camera flashlight switched on, and my stomach dropped, because standing in the room were 3 people wearing masks. One was clearly Nexus, another appeared to be Vanessa, and the third, tall, completely silent, wearing a black hoodie. Watching in, the video continued for nearly 20 minutes, mostly disturbing conversations about victims. But near the end, something horrifying happened. The masked person believed to be Nexus asked, "What if one of them escapes?" Then Watching It answered for the first time, and the second I heard the voice, my entire body froze, because I recognized it instantly. The detective recognized my reaction immediately. What is it? I could barely even speak. Because I knew that voice. Not from online, not from the stalking, from somewhere real, somewhere recent. Then it hit me. The therapist. My therapist. Dr. Adrian Keller. The same man helping me recover for over a year. The same man I told everything. Every fear. Every routine. Every paranoid thought. I actually started shaking violently. Because suddenly every conversation replayed differently in my head. Every calming sentence. Every question about my habits. Every detailed discussion about my trauma. He wasn't helping me heal. He was studying me. The detective immediately launched an emergency investigation. But by the time police reached Keller's office, it was empty, completely abandoned. No computers, no records, fake credentials. Even the framed degrees were counterfeit. The man literally never existed. I remember sitting in interrogation rooms for hours, afterward feeling like my brain was collapsing. Because there's betrayal, and then there's this. Imagine pouring your deepest fears into someone you trusted completely, only to discover they were part of the thing that traumatized you. Police raided Keller's supposed home next, again empty. But hidden beneath floorboards they found hard drives, hundreds of hours of recordings, victims from over 20 years, and one document changed everything. It was titled, Long-Term Observation Project. Inside were detailed files on dozens of people. Apparently the entire group believed prolonged fear and surveillance changed human behavior in predictable stages. They weren't just stalking people for entertainment. They were experimenting on them psychologically, watching paranoia grow over years, watching trust collapse, watching trauma reshape personalities. And somehow, I became one of their longest-running subjects. The detective later admitted something horrifying. Keller likely inserted himself into my recovery, intentionally to continue monitoring how trauma evolved over time. That realization nearly destroyed me mentally. Because after that, I couldn't trust my own memories anymore. How much of my healing was real? How many conversations were manipulation? How many safe moments were fake? Then suddenly, the investigation exploded nationally. Federal agencies got involved. Old cold cases reopened, more victims identified, and buried deep in recovered files. They found references to an inner circle, a group even Nexus feared. People who never appeared publicly, never directly interacted, only watched, only documented. And according to the files, Watchanin was one of them. The scariest part, nobody ever found him. Not officially. Dr. Keller vanished completely. No confirmed sightings. Nobody. Nothing. Years have passed since then. I live under a different name now. Different country too. And honestly, some nights I still wake up convinced someone is standing in the room watching me. Sometimes I still check Windows 3 or 4 times before sleeping. Sometimes I still wonder if random strangers recognize me from old files somewhere. But the worst feeling isn't fear anymore. It's uncertainty. Because after everything, I genuinely don't know how much of my life was ever truly private. And maybe that's the real horror. Not being watched, but realizing someone could study your entire life for years, and you might never fully know when it started. I stopped therapy after Keller disappeared. Obviously, after something like that, trusting another therapist felt impossible. Honestly, trusting anyone felt impossible. For almost a year, I lived quietly overseas under a different name. No close friends, no relationships, no routines anyone could track. I worked remote jobs, moved apartments constantly, and avoided cameras whenever possible. It sounds extreme, but after what happened, extreme started feeling reasonable. The strange part was that nobody contacted me anymore. No messages, no cameras, no signs of surveillance. And eventually, a dangerous thought started creeping into my mind. Maybe it was finally over. Then I got the email. No sender, no subject line, just a single sentence. You stopped being interesting when you started hiding. I stared at the screen for almost 10 minutes without moving, because that message felt different from the others. Not threatening, disappointed, like someone criticizing a TV show that became boring. I deleted the email immediately, but the damage was already done. Because suddenly, I realized something horrifying. They were still watching enough to know how my behavior changed. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I walked around my apartment checking everything repeatedly. Windows, locks, vents. Then around AM, I noticed something outside. A red laser dot. Tiny, shaking slightly against my living room wall. At first, my brain couldn't process it. Then the dot slowly moved upward, toward my chest. My blood froze instantly. I dropped to the floor immediately. The laser disappeared. I crawled toward the kitchen, shaking violently, and called emergency services. Police searched nearby rooftops for hours. Nothing. No weapon. No suspect. but they did find footprints on a nearby, abandoned building directly facing my apartment windows. Someone had definitely been there. The responding officer later tried calming me down by saying it could have been kids with a laser pointer. But deep down, I knew better, because 2 days later, another package arrived. Inside was a printed photo taken through my apartment window that same night. A red dot centered on my chest, and written beneath it, "Relax, if we wanted to kill you, you'd already be dead." That sentence changed something inside me permanently, because until then, part of me still believed this was obsession, control, psychological games. But now I understood the truth. They wanted power more than death. Fear lasted longer. I contacted the federal investigator from the Keller case immediately. At first, he sounded frustrated. I reached out again. Then I showed him the photo. Silence. Long silence. Then he quietly admitted something I'll never forget. "We think they're still recruiting." That made my stomach turn. Apparently, investigators discovered hidden forums continuing to operate, even after the arrests and disappearances. Different names now, different structures, but same methods: isolation, observation, manipulation. The investigator believed the original group evolved into something larger over time, less emotional, more organized, almost cult-like. And according to intercepted conversations, my case had become famous among them. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a legacy subject. That phrase genuinely made me feel sick. Then the investigator asked me something strange. "Did Keller ever encourage you to write?" I froze. Because yes, constantly. Journals, recorded thoughts, detailed emotional reflections. He always claimed documenting trauma helped recovery. The investigator's expression darkened instantly, because apparently recovered files showed the group collected victims' personal writings obsessively, not just surveillance, internal thoughts, emotional evolution. They wanted complete psychological profiles. And suddenly, I realized something horrifying. I'd spent over a year voluntarily documenting my fears directly for them. Thousands of pages. Everything they could possibly want. That realization honestly broke me. I burned every journal I had that same night. Every single one. Then things got worse. Because the following week, I noticed someone following me physically again. A woman this time. Short dark hair, grey coat, always far away. Subtle, professional. I spotted her 3 separate times across different parts of the city. Every time I tried approaching, she disappeared. Then one evening, while entering my apartment building, I found something taped underneath my mailbox. A key. No note. Just a key with a small tag attached. Storage Unit 28. I should have ignored it. I know that now. But after years of being manipulated by fear, curiosity becomes automatic. The storage facility sat near the industrial district outside the city. Mostly empty. Rain pouring hard the night I went. I remember my hands shaking while unlocking Unit 28. The metal door slowly rolled upward, and my entire body went cold, because inside was my old life. Photos, printouts, copies of documents, old gaming screenshots, therapy notes, even childhood photos I never posted online. The walls were covered with them, like some museum dedicated to me. Then I noticed the television in the corner. It switched on by itself. Static first, then video. Dr. Keller appeared on screen. Alive. My heart stopped. The recording looked recent. He smiled calmly into the camera. "Hello, Ethan." I genuinely couldn't breathe. Keller continued speaking casually like this was another therapy session. He explained the group monitored behavioral adaptation to prolonged surveillance trauma. According to him, most victims eventually broke in predictable ways: isolation, paranoia, aggression, self-destruction. But me, I adapted differently. That's why I fascinated them. He actually sounded proud, like a scientist discussing research. Then he said something that still haunts me. "You survived because part of you started enjoying the observation too." I screamed at the screen for him to shut up. But deep down, that sentence disturbed me because part of me feared it was true. After years of being watched, you start structuring your life around the watcher. Even in silence, they remain in your head. Keller kept talking, saying they never planned killing me, saying fear was more educational than violence. Then near the end of the tape, his tone changed completely, more serious. "You need to understand something important, Ethan." He leaned closer toward the camera. "There was never just one Watchenin." My blood ran cold. Keller explained Watchenin wasn't a person. It was a title, an identity passed between members over time, a role, the observer behind the observers. And according to him, I knew Watchenin had already replaced Daniel long ago. Then the screen suddenly went black. New text appeared. "Look behind you." Every survival instinct exploded at once. I spun around immediately. and saw someone standing outside the storage unit in the rain, watching silently. Black hoodie, face hidden, completely still. I ran instantly, not toward them, away. The figure never chased me, never spoke, just stood there watching while rain poured around them. That somehow terrified me more, because it meant they didn't need to chase me anymore. The fear already lived inside me permanently. By the time police arrived later, the person was gone. Again. No fingerprints, no cameras, nothing useful. Only one thing remained inside the storage unit after investigators cleared it. A single note taped beneath the television. 5 handwritten words. Observation continues until natural conclusion. After the storage unit incident, I completely disappeared, at least publicly. I stopped using phones registered under my name, stopped renting apartments normally, cash only whenever possible, no patterns, no routines, no attachments. I even started sleeping in different places every few nights because paranoia had completely consumed me. And the worst part, I couldn't tell anymore whether the fear was rational or exactly what they wanted, because Keller was right about one thing. After years of observation, you start observing yourself too. Every action becomes calculated. Every stranger becomes suspicious. Every coincidence feels designed. That's how they trap you mentally, even when nobody's physically there anymore. Then one night, while staying in a tiny motel outside Prague, I woke up to someone knocking softly on the wall beside my bed. Not the door, the wall. 3 slow taps. Tap, tap, tap. My entire body froze. Then came a whisper through the thin motel wall. Ethan. I grabbed my bag immediately and ran. Didn't even look outside first. Just ran. I spent the next 6 hours sitting inside a crowded train station, shaking and watching everyone around me. Nobody approached. Nobody looked suspicious. But that was the problem. People like them never look suspicious. Around sunrise, I finally checked my backpack for money and documents. That's when I found the envelope. I know it wasn't there before. Inside was a train ticket. My name printed on it. Destination, Geneva. And beneath it, handwritten in black ink. Stop running. You're ready now. I almost threw up reading it, because for the first time, it no longer felt like stalking. It felt like recruitment. The realization terrified me more than death, honestly. They were trying to recruit me. That thought honestly disturbed me more than the stalking ever did, because after years of fear, isolation, and paranoia, I finally understood how some victims eventually became part of the organization themselves. You spend so long disconnected from normal people that eventually the only people who understand your reality are the people destroying your life. That's how they trap you psychologically. For weeks, I kept running from city to city, sleeping in cheap hotels and train stations, barely trusting anyone around me. But no matter where I went, they somehow kept finding me. Messages, photos, hidden recordings. At some point, I realized something horrifying. Either somebody was still actively tracking me, or the fear itself had become part of me permanently. Eventually, I stopped running and contacted the federal investigator handling the Watcher cases. That's when he finally admitted the truth. The organization was far bigger than anyone originally believed. Different countries, different cells, different online groups, but all connected by the same obsession: observation, fear, behavioral control. Then investigators discovered something hidden in recovered files called the Archive. According to intelligence reports, it contained decades of surveillance material, psychological studies, victim profiles, recordings, and identities connected to the entire organization. And apparently, the Watchers were planning to move it before authorities could find it. That's when the investigators asked me to help them. They wanted me to go undercover online again and pretend I was finally accepting the Watchers' ideology. Honestly, I almost refused immediately. The idea of entering that world again after everything nearly destroyed me mentally. But I also knew one thing: if nobody stopped them, more people would end up like me. So I agreed. Using a fake identity, investigators slowly reintroduced me into hidden online spaces connected to the organization. At first, it was subtle: encrypted forums, private discussion groups, strange philosophical conversations about privacy, fear, and identity. The deeper I went, the more disturbing the conversations became. These people genuinely believed fear revealed people's true selves. They believed observation stripped away fake personalities and exposed who humans really were underneath. Then I met someone using the name Shepard. Calm, intelligent, always observing more than speaking. And something about him immediately disturbed me. The way he typed, the way he analyzed emotions. It reminded me of Keller. Shepard eventually began messaging me privately. He kept saying strange things like, "Fear refines people," or "Most humans only become honest once they realize they're being watched." The investigators monitoring the chats believed Shepard might be senior leadership inside the organization, so I kept talking to him. Weeks passed like that. Then one night, Shepard finally sent coordinates to a hidden gathering where the archive was supposedly being transferred. That led investigators to an abandoned mountain research facility near the Austrian border. The night of the raid felt unreal. Snow everywhere, armed teams moving silently through forests, agents preparing for what they thought would be a simple evidence recovery operation. But the second they breached the building, everything went wrong. The facility was massive. Observation rooms, hidden cameras, underground archives, thousands of surveillance files stacked floor to ceiling, photographs of victims from different decades, different countries, entire lives documented and categorized like experiments. And then I saw something that nearly stopped my heart. A childhood photograph of me, years before Nexus, years before the stalking officially started. That was the moment I realized something horrifying. The Watchers had known about me long before I ever met them online. Then an old projector inside the archive room switched on automatically, and Keller appeared on the screen. That's when he finally explained the real purpose behind the Watchers. According to Keller, the organization wasn't originally created just to stalk people. It started decades earlier as a behavioral research project studying how constant observation changes human identity over time. Fear, paranoia, isolation, self-awareness. They wanted to understand how people behaved once they believed they were always being watched. But according to Keller, the real breakthrough wasn't surveillance technology. It was self-surveillance. People eventually monitoring themselves automatically even when nobody was physically watching anymore. And according to Keller, I was one of their most successful subjects. After years of manipulation and fear, I had learned to monitor myself constantly, checking windows, changing routines, controlling behavior, performing for invisible observers even when nobody was there. That's why the organization became obsessed with me. I represented proof their experiments worked long term. Then the projector switched again, and for the first time in my life, I saw Elias Vos, the founder of the entire organization. Vos calmly explained that decades earlier, the Watchers began as a private behavioral research project funded by powerful people, obsessed with prediction and psychological control. At first, they used cameras, hidden observation rooms, and direct surveillance. But over time, society itself evolved toward constant self-observation naturally. Social media, online identities, algorithms, public validation, people performing their lives constantly for invisible audiences. According to Vos, humanity was slowly becoming exactly what the Watchers predicted decades earlier. Then the entire facility suddenly began destroying itself remotely. Servers wiping automatically, hard drives frying, files burning. Agents scrambled desperately trying to save whatever evidence they could before everything disappeared. Chaos exploded everywhere. Alarms, smoke, emergency lights flashing red through the halls. And while investigators evacuated the building, I found one final file sitting alone on a table with my name written across it. Inside was a childhood photo of me sleeping in the backseat of my mother's car, and beneath it were the words, "Subject demonstrated fear unusually early." That sentence haunted me instantly, because suddenly everything changed. I realized I had never been randomly selected. The Watchers had known about me since childhood, and that was the moment I finally understood the terrifying truth. I hadn't accidentally become part of the experiment later in life. I had been part of it from the very beginning.